maybe something happens from a long, long time ago. It could be something minor. It does not need to be, a major traumatic event. It could be something very minor, something somebody said. And what we do is we create a filter that we see things through. We grow up with it and it stays there until we deal with it. So these filters as adults end up being like people pleasing or not trusting yourself or not feeling wanted. And they show up in all kinds of ways in our businesses. So what I do is I help people uncover that and really get to the core, the thing that's holding
of the most audacious podcast the internet has to offer. You got it locked to the Audacious Living Podcast, and as always, it's an absolute pleasure to be here and be able to continue our conscious. And we don't see them, we don't recognize them, we act in certain ways, and we don't know why we're doing it, but we're doing it. And they really can take over our lives if we're not careful. So perhaps maybe as a starting point, I can get you to sort of talk about the work that you do and how we deal with subconscious limitation. Maybe talk a little bit what they are, and then we can talk about how we deal with them.
Sure. So the subconscious limitation, some people refer to this as shadow work.
Okay.
Dealing with the stuff in the shadows, the stuff that you've, swept under the rug, the stuff that maybe, that happened when you were 2 or, 5 years old and you forgot about. So what happens is maybe something happens from a long, long time ago. It could be something minor. It does not need to be, a major traumatic event. It could be something very minor, something somebody said. And what we do is we create a filter that we see things through. We grow up with it and it stays there until we deal with it. So these filters as adults end up being like people pleasing or not trusting yourself or not feeling wanted. And they show up in all kinds of ways in our businesses. So what I do is I help people uncover that and really get to the core, the thing that's holding them back the most. We uncover it, and then we pull out, we bring it up from back here, right here, so you can see it and deal with it, shift it, and then you get to step into a whole new energy, a whole new way of being, and all kinds of things open up then.
I would imagine this very interesting work, because if you think about these things that hold us back, sometimes they're intentionally put behind us so we don't see them, and other times they're unintentional. And facing that thing isn't easy, is it?
Yeah. So, and speaking of that, I mean, I see people where sometimes they know exactly what it is.
Yes.
And that's the case a lot of times, like, people that have gone through trauma, they have had some kind of thing that's happened, or maybe way of growing up. Maybe they grew up in a home that was my story. I grew up in a home with a dad that was verbally abusive. So it was obvious, the blocks that I had. What wasn't obvious is how they were showing up. On the flip side of that, you have other people that come in to me that are maybe they haven't really figured out what it is. Like they're overwhelmed all the time, or they're or they're people pleasing, but they don't know the source of the people pleasing. They're told all the things to stop, but then it's like this vicious guilt cycle going on that's hard. I mentioned that one because I see that so often. People pleasing, so common.
Is that one of the more common ones, you say?
Yes, definitely. Different sources, different reasons behind it, but it is a very common one.
Could we maybe touch on some of these reasons, given that it's as common as it is?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Well, first I'll tell you a clue. Okay. Some clues that I see that I'm like, okay, there's probably a people pleasing thing going on here, a filter. So to speak, is usually it's somebody that's overwhelmed. And they're overwhelmed because their schedule is so incredibly full because they're saying yes to everything. And usually if it happens in their business, they're also doing it at home. The honey-do list might be a mile long and they're trying to get all the things. They're always saying yes to everybody, their kids, their wife, their husband, their friends. And so they're overwhelmed, but they're also frustrated that they're not getting ahead in their business because they don't feel like there's enough time to get everything done. And the reason there's not enough time is because they're saying yes to things out of guilt or a need for validation. It creates this guilt cycle. And so some of the reasons behind it can be feeling unwanted, feeling unworthy. Sometimes there's patterns of guilt. So if you grew up in, some of this is generational, even. I'm kind of going deep quick, but it is like if you have a generational problem in your family of guilt, and that's the pattern that you grew up in, then you're likely to do the same thing because we develop these filters.
Right.
There's all kinds of things.
Yeah,
There's all kinds of things that plays into it.
And develop and not even know that they're there. Again, the subconscious.
Yeah. You're not there because it's normal to you. Like it's totally normal for me to feel guilty if I say no to my friend.
Yeah.
Like that's just so, why would it be any different?
And so to take that one step further, and I think this is important for us to recognize here, is that yes, they fill in the way that they feed into the way that we think, but then they all filter out through our actions. And so others might be looking at something or watching the way someone does something and not understand, but there's a whole layer of context that's going on that we know nothing about.
Right. And some people do a good job of covering it up. They smile, they're kind, they're, that you think that they're the person to go to. If you need a volunteer or somebody to organize an event, everybody thinks, oh, that's the person to do it because they always say yes. And on the inside, this person's feeling resentful. They're in turmoil, but they're afraid to say no. Sometimes it's out of rejection. They don't want to be rejected. Or there's always a deeper meaning or a deeper reason behind it. They don't always know. Usually they don't know what it is. But when you get to that, so many things can change.
Gotcha. The idea, because I know you talked earlier, it formed a long time ago in some instances in their childhood. But adults are impacted as well too. So it's not just something that had to happen when you're younger. Is there like I want to sort of talk about the when it happens and when it develops, at least again I'm talking about the subconscious limitations.
Sure. So our core emotions are developed before the age of 7.
Okay.
So that core stuff is like fear or anxiety, like those are all tied to fear, which is a core emotion. So being fearful of, speaking in front of other people or fear of rejection, that's a core emotion. So there was a time likely you experienced fear before the age of 7. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah. So usually it does go back, not always. Sometimes there's some kind of traumatic thing that, happens later in life. But most of the time it's stuff that's happened long ago that they're not even aware of. Like I said, it just gets swept under the rug and forgotten.
Yes.
And thought, oh, that little event that happened, that time that I was rejected on the playground, or that time that the coach, pointed his finger at me and said I should have done this way. They think it doesn't matter, but their subconscious mind thought it did. And it's like they're bringing that 5-year-old self into their adulthood. And then that's the person that's running their business.
The other interesting thing about that is any kind of event could trigger this. Like any small thing could be the root cause from maybe on the playground or I was running for the elevator and the person closed it and I didn't get in. Like it could literally be anything.
Yeah. It's interesting. You made me think of a story because it's not always a negative thing. Okay. I had worked with a client who she was a weight loss coach and she was struggling. She had lost a ton of weight and she wanted to coach other people, but she kept getting in this cycle of like sabotaging herself. Like she would feel guilty, like she would fall off, go on an eating binge for 2 or 3 days, then beat herself up for 2 or 3 days, and then not feel worthy of coaching clients about this. Well, what happened with her is we discovered a link that whenever she was young, her mom and her aunt would take her out, and they would celebrate when something good happened, good grades, and they would celebrate with what she called bad food. So I'm thinking ice cream, and food's not good or bad, but that's how she related to it. And so she had linked food and fun together. So with her new lifestyle, she had this huge problem with thinking that she was not going to have, if she had the healthy food, she was giving up all the fun. And it was a positive event, like her mom and her aunt, like it was a positive experience, but she had linked those two things together. And once we got to that and discovered it and shifted it, everything changed for her. She was able to go on trips with friends, eat something and then stop when she wanted to, so without all the guilt and all the days, and then get right back on track to where she was. So it's not always a negative thing. Sometimes it's, something you don't even expect.
That's a really, I'm glad you told that story and made that point, because I think our minds will automatically go to the negative thing and, oh my gosh, something bad happened. And you start to cycle through all the bad things that took place in your life to land on the triggering event.
Yeah. You never know. I mean, it's just, you never know. I worked with another, I don't know if you want another story, but it just made me think, you're making me think of like these, I don't want to call them strange, but like something you wouldn't think of, a man that was struggling with networking and in relationships, always feeling like he was trapped. And when he was a boy, he grew up on a farm, and he was playing in a truck with corn and like the wagon. And it was like tilted, I don't know if you've seen this, but it tilts. I grew up on a farm. So when it tilts back, it goes into the grain auger and, gets ground up, and there's like a little door. And he was falling into that. And his dad started yelling and screaming at him to get out of his safety. And he felt, he kept saying, I felt trapped. So that feeling trapped, his subconscious mind carried over to relationships. And even like he felt trapped if he sat in the middle of a networking meeting, like in the middle of the room and everybody else was around him. He had to sit on the edge of, like on the outskirts of the room instead of in the middle of it. So it's just really interesting. Like that was it wasn't a positive experience, but it was something for his good. They were keeping him safe.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But it still was something that settled in. So yeah, you just never know.
Gotcha. No, it makes sense. What does it mean to be subconsciously out of alignment with our goals?
So I've got a story of my own with that. Okay. So because sometimes we get in these, as business owners, we want to do what's right for our business. We want to do the things that we think are going to move us forward. So I did, and I always have a coach. I committed a long time ago to hiring a coach. So I hired a business coach, and I love her. She is like a phenomenal person. However, what was happening was I was doing all the things that were recommended, but they weren't aligned with me. And I didn't find this out until later, but I was doing everything to a T. And I just felt like I was getting putting my head against a wall. Like things were just not working. And the thing is, if you're not in alignment with it, if you feel like there's something that you're doing that you're not liking to do, or it's off energetically, it's not going to work. You're going to keep, putting your head up against a wall. So it means that either there's a subconscious limitation there that you need to deal with, or it could mean that maybe that's just not the thing for you. And maybe you find, because there's many ways to build businesses. There's many ways to have success, many, many ways. And just because it works for one person doesn't mean that it works for everybody.
Yes, and that's an important point, because we often look at other and go, hey, well, so and so's do that. Let me adopt that approach, or let me, as opposed to, and I think a really effective way is sort of, you can say copy, if you will, what you see, but you got to take the parts that work for you, as opposed to a blanket approach. And I'm gonna try and be like him, or I'll try and be like Audley. Like, there's ways you can incorporate others but still being authentic to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, my next coach, when I was telling this story to her, asked me, she said, because there was a specific activity that I was doing that didn't resonate well with me. And she asked me, how did that feel in your body? And I had never had anybody ask me that. I'm like, how did it feel in my body? And then I thought about it and I'm like, well, I really tightened up. Like I literally could feel the tightening in my gut area. And so that is my cue now, that if I get that feeling that something's off, because our body tells us also what's going on in the mind. It's all connected.
And I guess that's one of the ways when we talk about how it kind of shows up, right? Is these limitations? Are there other ways that it can appear?
Most of the time it's in our behaviors, it's in our patterns. Most of the time it's in our language. I'm trained to pick up in those things, but I feel like
give an example.
Well, like I pick up on guilt words. People that, this is an easy one. Anybody can probably find that. But if people say should a lot, or, should, and if they use that word a lot, then they're probably dealing with a lot of guilt. Something's there that's keeping them in the cycle. And yeah, they may have some people pleasing going on too.
So should suggests obligation.
Yes. Yeah. And if you are listening to this and that's in your vocabulary, you can just shift it to I want to, or I'm choosing to, instead of I should.
I like those options, because both are quite hopeful. That's hopeful language.
Right. Yeah. It's different than should.
Right.
Yeah. It is different. But I think some of it, the way I grew up, because my dad had a lot of anger growing up. So there was a lot of, I had to be really, really aware of how I was being, so that I could kind of pre-calculate how he was going to be, if that makes sense. So I think it serves me now, because I am in tune with what people, like, really on a almost spidey sense level of what people are thinking or doing before they even say it.
So picking up on it right away.
Yeah. So along with the training, it's helpful.
No, I definitely can see that, where that is helpful, and being able to sort of pick that up. And I'm still, quite honestly, Kim, I'm still sort of fascinated around the idea of identifying it, because it can be so subtle in our behavior, right? I would imagine it's the patterns that's a good thing to watch out for.
Yeah, it's a pattern. I have ways of helping people pull that out. Because honestly, how you are in one area is how you do one thing is how you do everything. I'm sure you've heard that quote. That's true. So if it shows up in one area, even on a minor thing, it's probably showing up somewhere else. So, we dig into, what's triggering you, what's the thing that's, really making your skin boil underneath when, things happen. Like, how do you respond to that? So getting to the whys can be tricky, but it's also, it's life-changing if you're willing to dig in, commit and dig in. And there's always layers. That's the other side of this, is once you start personal growth, you're not done.
Right.
Like, there's no course you can take that,
covers everything.
Yeah. There's no like, oh, if you take this course for 6 months, you are going to be there. Because we're like, the movie Shrek, when he describes himself as an onion.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Well, but that's so true, right? Like we do
It
have
is.
all these layers to us. And I think the thing about it is as we uncover more about who we are and what we are and what's important to us, we start to realize how complex, we are as humans.
Yeah. Yeah. We're amazing beings. And the beautiful part about the journey is that with the layers, you go deeper. So it's not like you're dealing with the same things over and over again. It's a deeper part of it. And you keep pulling back, and then you get to experience things differently. You get to experience better relationships.
Yes.
Maybe you don't have, the hangups about reaching out to people and sales calls as much as you used to. Like all those things, it really makes a difference.
So I guess the goal is to move from sort of, and I know you talk about sort of subconscious awareness, but the subconscious limitations to the subconscious, to the conscious awareness, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're always going to be unaware. I mean, we're 90% of our everything is ran by our subconscious mind, but it's the being aware and getting more attuned to, okay, when is this happening? Why is it happening? And, how fast can I shift myself through it?
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I think it's all fascinating stuff. And again, when you sort of tie it back to what we spend time on this podcast talking about, really, it's about getting past those things that hold us back or that impede our progress, or that make things more difficult. And again, as I said off the top, some of them we can clearly see it, and some of them we just can't.
Right.
Amazing. And then so when you sort of take that step further, being able to address and deal with them do allow us to live, as we say in the tagline of this podcast, and live our best audacious lives ever, because we're able to get past those situations or those circumstances or those things and really do the things that we're meant to do.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. That's like my big hope for everybody, because then the world's better. The world's better. People relate to each other. I mean, honestly, at my core, because of the way I grew up, I'm like, I want people to relate better. I want people to communicate to their kids in a better way so that they grow up differently. And, and then we have conversations that are productive instead of the back and forth, division that we sometimes see.
Amazing. No, you're absolutely right. It's amazing. Kim, this is such a delightful chat. I really thank you for taking the time and being here. It really open up our subconscious and of those limitations that might be there, and the work that you're doing to not uncover, but then address and deal with it. And actually, before we go, because let's talk a little bit more about the specific tools that you use to deal with them, right? So, and excuse me for jumping back, but as I was thinking out loud, it was like, okay, wait a second, I found it, right? I found it. I know what it is. The thing I've got this strange behavior I've always done. I've found it. I now know what it is. It's now time to address the behavior, really.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And whether we extinguish it or we have some kind of replacement for it, what does that look like?
Yeah, sure. So I have a resource for this, but I'll kind of walk through, and then I'll give you a link to the resource. But after you've been able to identify what it is, the next part of that is you want to, and this is a journaling thing. So to the audience, like, this is pull out a journal and spend a lot of time, or you can connect with me, or, there's lots of amazing people out there that do this shadow work, as we call it. Connect with me or someone else that does this work. But you want to get to the root. You want to find out, what that thing was. Was it before the age of 7? Was it something else? Was it generational? There are people that will even identify with past lives. Where did it come from? And then you shift it, or you extract, like, what are the learnings from it? Like, what are the positive things out of this Even if it's a negative event, what are the things that you can learn that you can take with you? Like, what's the truth about you?
Yes.
What would your higher self or God or, the universe say about you instead? What's the truth that's there? And then you take that with you and you're able to step into a new energy. And when I say new energy, it's showing up in a different way so that, and people feel it, you feel the energy of a person before they ever open their mouths. So, that's a whole other thing, but I have a whole resource for this. Your audience can download. It's called Unlocking Your Authentic Self.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the steps to take, 3 steps to identify, overcome, and overcome hidden limitations in your life and your business. You can find it on my website, KimberlyLebbing.com. I think the specific link is resources.KimberlyLebbing.com/unlock. So I can make sure you have that so you can put it in the show notes.
Absolutely. No question. And, when you mentioned energy, I smile because that's a big one, right? You feel, and you actually made the point, you feel the energy before everyone says anything. And it shows you how little our words are when in this work that we're talking about, right?
You're right. You're right. I mean, that's, one of the things I do with clients after we do this deep work on themselves is helping them communicate with other people. And that's a big part of it is, how are you showing up? What energy are you wanting to show up? Because 70% of communication is nonverbal. And so how you show up, and there's just so many lessons there. That's a whole other podcast though.
Okay. Well, you are correct. Absolutely. Kim, this has been wonderful. I really appreciate you taking the time and doing this. Had a lot of fun. Appreciate the insights and congrats on all the great work.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on today. I appreciate it. And I hope all of your listeners, share and rate your episode. Go on and rate the episode because that helps all of us.
Certainly does. Thanks, Kim. Be well.
Thank you.
Back we are here on the podcast, and much thanks and appreciation goes out to Kim for stopping by and sharing the wonderful